When I got your email, you were still
I'm Bill Elliott. Yeah. We're part of Gail's group. Yeah, there's another one coming, I think Keith.
Had a good trip.
Hello there. New to Kumar. And then you here 1 week old. 1 week old. So, yeah, wanting to meet new friends. The first stop that I came was like, yeah, this might be a good place for me. I don't have any friends came all year because of the move, so I thought, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
She didn't run me so much.
I remember that, but I can't remember what it said.
Remember something about the
We were just living
interwoven.
That makes my heart to sing.
That's why they keep you around. Yeah, pretty close. That's your thing. That's my thing.
Okay. Good. And most people are very friendly.
Back home.
Yeah. Farm good is good. Cold surgeon that, they really wanted to get served like Alvarez.
Yeah, he's retired.
But he didn't do his job.
Started if you guys want.
Yeah, right.
Hi, thank you guys for coming. Today we're pleased to welcome author Gail Kenna to discuss her latest book, Tennis Talk of Nobody. Ms. Kenna is the author of 6 books and has won numerous writing awards, including recent ones from the National League of American Pen Women. For 7 years, she served as the creative nonfiction judge for San Francisco's Soul Making Keats before the literary contest ended last year. Ms. Kenna has taught writing and literature for colleges and universities in 4 countries and 4 states. Since 2005, she has created and taught courses for Rappahannock Community College, Rappahannock Institute for Lifelong Learning. Through her LLC, Cross Hill Creek Publications, she offers instruction and editing services for those with an interest in writing. The book she is here to discuss today, Tennis Talk of a Nobody, is an insightful account of the author's lifelong passion for tennis. Now we're pleased to turn the program over to Ms. Kenna.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me fine? Okay. I have written what I want to say because I know then how long my words will take. And I won't divert. And I want to leave time for questions, which I hope you will have. No images on the screen today. You can get rid of that one. That was a long time ago. And I'd like to thank Shelley because she's not only the helpful tech person at the library, but she is the leader of this book club. And welcome to all of you who read my book and have come to hear me today. I'd also like to give special thanks to my tennis pals up here. Back there's Bill and Norm and Keith. Charlie seems to be missing, and Dory. They have kept me playing tennis, and I still play in 81. And the men, by the way, not Dory, are all younger. So Tennis Talk of the Nobody is divided into 3 sets. And in set 1, the second narrative is titled, Tennis is Why You Exist, Dear Daughters. If you've read this piece, you will know Mike, my wonderful husband for 56 years, as Gunner, and me as Volley. Because in the summer of 1967, unknown to each other, we ended up by chance, by accident, by serendipity, as instructors in a posh girls' camp in Kings Canyon, California, where our names had to match what we taught: riflery, tennis. Here's the first sentence of the second piece in set 1. First Carrie Fisher, then Debbie Reynolds. That was the order of the duo getting out of a black limousine in front of the Montecito Sequoia Lodge that June afternoon in 1967. So how did I come to write this narrative? Because over 50 years later, in late December of 2017, Carrie Fisher at age 60 and her mother Debbie Reynolds at 84 died within one day of each other. A lot of you would remember that. That was when my writer's voice spoke and said, Gail, you need to write for Michelle and Bonnie, our daughters, the story of how you and Mike met. So they will know how lucky they are that their mother did not end up dead in the bottom of Kings Canyon in her blue Volkswagen. This could have been fatal accident was when Mike and I left the girls' camp in early evening after the first 4-week session. It was divided into 2 sessions. I had been fired, and Mike gallantly quit. My life changed on this decision in that moment. We ate dinner. We stayed to have dinner because neither of us had money and we had to be paid. We stayed to have dinner with the campers. We stayed for the second session. And then we headed down the mountain. Mike in his Mercury Cougar and Gail in her VW Bug. And the following June, Mike and I married. And as a slice, as said in tennis, I mailed a wedding announcement to the Montecito Sequoia Girls Camp director, Dr. Barnes. Why I was fired is explained in Dear Daughters, so if you haven't read it, you might like to. This afternoon I'm wearing white because I have spent so much of my life in white attire, both playing and teaching tennis. I even wore white tennis dresses that month in the mountains when I met Mike. And if you watched any Wimbledon matches this last week, anyone? You know white is still required at this historic tournament at the Queen's Club in England, or now they call it the All England Club. But yet today I'm wearing this white blouse in memory of a fine woman, an educator in Abington, Virginia. Rachel Folks was still working, still vital in her community when she went one Saturday last year to an outdoor weekend market and had a fatal stroke. She was 78 in the 3rd set of life. Rachel's daughter Meryl, my daughter Michelle's best friend from their Duke University days, gave me her wardrobe. She wanted me to have it. We were the same size, both educators. Meryl told me that her mother had hoped to die as her father had, mowing the lawn one day. Not like her mother, who lingered for years with dementia in the care facility, which is what happened to my mother, who died 2 months before age 98. Rachel's hope for a swift death was branded, and her blouse, which I am wearing, reminds me why I ended the tennis book as I did, in a 2-page, The Last Point. I wrote, tennis makes a promise. The game is not over until the last point. I like to think that mine will come as I run for a wide forehand. It might be playing with Norm or Bill or Keith and hit a winner from the alley. What a way to say goodbye. And by the way, I played with a wonderful man. I was a part of the Golden Rackets up in Northern Virginia. When I was very young. You had to be 15 to get into it. And he was a wonderful man, and he said all the time, I want to die on the tennis court. He was in great shape. He was an old Army colonel. And one day, that's exactly what he did. And nobody could feel very sad. Just that's how he wanted to go, getting his last tennis ball. So maybe that'll be me. Why did I write Tennis Talk of Nobody? To better understand through the strings of memory within the frame of the tennis racket, the pattern and weave of my life before that last point in the third set. So this afternoon, I begin with a tennis racket. This is one my daughter Michelle spotted last December in the Kilmarnock Antique Gallery for $10. I looked them up and they were quite expensive on the internet. And this is the same racket as my father's. It's a Davis. And this is the same racket that I took to my very first tennis lesson in Fullerton, California in 1953. There were no special rackets for kids then. No larger and softer balls either. You know, and it is obvious to me that this Davis racket was left in a dry closet and never used. The strings are so tight, as if new, and the wood, look up. You know, this is the days you used to have to keep them in a wood frame. Some of you would know you had to screw the frame on to keep it from warping. It's not warped at all. There was not one mark on this racket when I bought it until I took it to Indian Creek. And there's a net there. It's just called a wall net. And I was hitting balls in the scrape for my scraping the court. So look at that. And compare it to that. Look at that. It's so long, too. Yeah. So that's how much that's changed. So, what I want to go to is I have my notes here. Now, 71 years later, after that first tennis lesson, this is my latest racket. And I'm going to talk about this racket because it becomes very interesting from what I wrote about in the book. I found it accidentally a few months ago when George, Indian Creek's tennis pro, set out many newly strung demo rackets. I did not need a racket. In fact, I didn't even tell my husband I bought it. I had this racket and I liked it a lot. It's called Technifiber. I didn't like the name of it because I'm not good at modern technology. But I liked this racket. But I picked this one up and I wouldn't hit balls with it. And I thought, who made this racket? I gotta have it. So I bought it. And so the racket is made by the Solinco Company in Torrance, California. I used to live close to that. The company was and still is known for tennis strings. Then Selinko ventured into rackets to design one that would work for beginners all the way up to professional. They began with just two rackets, the blackout and the whiteout. I have the whiteout, obviously. So if I say to you whiteout, right now just think, what is in your mind, like an image or something from the word whiteout? What? Jenny?
Something that you, in the old days of typewriters, that you would like paint over and type over again.
Do you all remember somebody using whiteout? Now, what's the other image you think of?
Snow.
A blizzard and snow. So here's this racket, and then you're thinking, wow, that's what I thought of, the two things you just said. By the way, there's some slang for whiteout too, drug related. I'm not going there, okay? So a product to, and the word you think of, you were able to really cover over, but you could erase the mistake in the sense that you covered it over. And but this is what I found from reading about the Selinko company. Apparently it was the company's advertising ploy to use colors because people remember them easily. But this is my question that I'm asking now. Aren't both blackout and whiteout about erasure? About loss of light, of consciousness? Blackout, that's what Rachel will probably have when she had the stroke, and she's lost now consciousness and light. Well, I thought about this, and yesterday I stopped writing to probe the word erasure in my thick 2-volume Oxford English Dictionary. I have the OED, I love the OED because from its inception in the late 19th century, sentences from writers are written beneath the word and definition to show the usage in prose. And for erasure, whose name did I see in a sentence below the definition? You can't make these things up. None other than the writer Julian Barnes. And the quote is one I recognize from Julian's novel, Staring at the Sun. Think of the irony of that. An action which is not possible in a whiteout or a blackout. Barnes' novel was published in 1986. It has a mother and son, and it is the son George who delves into his past through a computer using AI. But George discovers it is impossible to recognize whether the written voice on the screen belongs to a human or to a machine. Talk about timely. This novel was published 38 years ago. The sentence in the OED for erasure, the one used in Barnes' novel, is this one. I'm going to try to read it like it would have been on the screen. We use infrared light to pierce erasure in the correspondence. We is not George, but AI. Okay, this might sound desultory, but where did I write so much of tennis talk? With pen and yellow pad paper in an infrared sauna, a sun-lightened sauna. Seriously, what are the chances I should find a quote from Julian Barnes for a novel I've read and a novel I gave to the orthopedic surgeon William E. Nord III? My correspondence with him is in set 3 of my book, and only after I wrote Tennis Talk and Dr. Nord had read Tennis Talk with a notary did I learn this. Ever since his university days, his orthopedic in Richmond had communicated with the literature professor until her death. So he communicated with her, and what made this orthopedic surgeon turn in the doorway of the exam room that September day in 2019 to ask me a question? I had told him I could not have knee replacement in October, and he had asked me why. I said I was teaching a literature course on Julian Barnes. He said nothing. But then he stopped in the doorway and asked, is this writer dead or alive? If Dr. Nord hadn't done that, his story would not be set free of Tennis Hop, and I might not have written the book. Dr. Nord's notes, always written in pencil, were darkened in the second edition, which makes them much easier to read. And a few egregious errors were corrected too. By the way, Dr. Nord appreciates this library's book sale. Because at the end of the sale, I fill a shopping bag for $5 and give books to him and his wife Diane, an artist, for their library in the historic 18th century home on the James River. And he just wrote a note to me because he'd been on holiday, and he had read, he's now started on the writer Penelope this year. Now, my Wednesday morning tennis pal Keith, who's back there, wrote a testimonial for my book, and in it he said, Kenna weaves a commentary on life's serendipitous twists and turns, all within the strings of a tennis racket. And my friend Ilona Duncan, who designs and posts my weekly blog on literature, once sent me a quote on serendipity by the Czech writer Milan Kundera. The quote is from his novel, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, which was made into a fine film. I am going to read Kundera's quote slowly. It is in two parts and important for everything I am saying today. So Kundera begins this way. We call serendipity the gladsome coincidence of two events, rendered meaningful by the emotional weight of each and the minute cosmic odds of their co-occurrence. So then he goes on to say that these highly improbable gifts of chance, I repeat, highly improbable gifts of chance, are also rendered meaningful by the focus of our attention, by choosing to attend to those particular elements of reality amid the myriad others swarming us at the same time. For how we choose to pay attention renders the world what it is. Ilona Duncan put this quote on my website yesterday. It's really one worth having. And my website's easy to access, and I have cards on the back table to give that address. So, I have one more show and tell item today. But the first is this claim. When I was a child, I read. My favorite place in Fullerton was the public library, a fine old building in a Spanish style with red tile floors and old, long wood tables. I dreamed for the day I was about to go in the regular part with the adults. It was like a rite of passage like none other. I fell in love with literature in third grade when I read The Yearling. How many of you have read The Yearling? Yeah, I see how the women in the book are. I mention this because I love literature as much as anything in life except family and friends, teaching and tennis. And it is good literature that made me sensitive to chance, circumstance, and connection, what I call the 3 C's of life. So, I hold up this keychain. I just got this from USC because they have 50 years, they've had a project there called the Joint Educational Project. It didn't start until long after I left SC. But they go into, SC is downtown Los Angeles, or it's closer to East LA, and the area is not particularly a desirable one in lots of ways. It's a wonderful area, but the kids who are in those areas, they need a lot of books and reading. So many of the schools there use 2 of my books, my book on the cat and my book on the gold rush. And so anyway, the people sent me all kinds of little thank yous. What I have else hanging on this though, and I don't even know where I got this. I shared this with the other day. What it is a quote from Oscar Wilde on this teeny little, and the quote says, if one cannot enjoy reading a book over and over again, there is no use in reading it at all. I make no claim for my book, except to say, I think it requires a second reading. And recently, a California writer and once professional dancer named Sheila Kogan wrote to me, and she said, I reread Tennis slowly and more deliberately a second time. Given I'm a totally no tennis dancer, the first time I read your book quickly, finding the stories interesting and entertaining. This time I found a lovely connection with you and saw more clearly the connection with your father and how tennis, somewhat like dance for me, has been a vibrant thread throughout your life. And then she says, also, since I recently got a new knee, I was especially intrigued with the correspondence with your orthopedic surgeon. It is a captivating memoir. And then she said, but at some point, you and I might have to talk about the nobody in your title. Well, another bit of luck or chance or accident or serendipity. I found this book the other day at the Animal Welfare League. It's a book that I gave to someone years ago and never got back. I was so excited. I got it for $1. And I love this book. I knew somebody by Nuala and Bailey. She's deceased, but she was a wonderful journalist in Ireland. So my response to Sheila is that, I can find what I have here. I don't think it's either or, somebody or nobody. I think it's a both and. You're nobody and you're somebody. And I think that's what she was trying to say in this book. So anyway, that's the concept. They might have to change. I'd like to end with this. The other day, I found some things in a box of mementos I have for my mother. One of the things I found, you remember that paper? Erasable. Oh. It was a letter I wrote to my father, and right before he had the surgery to have the valve in his heart replaced, and we were living at the time in Germany. So I wrote a letter to him, and I said in it, quote, today I thought about all the times you almost died. And I said, Dad, you will pull through, like always. Besides my letter, I found one an old friend who knew my father had sent. So my mother had kept these among her things. And he had written this when he heard that Robert Darren Wilson, my father, had died. The thing is, my father lived without knowing why he felt good after the surgery, and then became so ill. Everything in his body eventually infected, including the lining of his heart. 6 years later, Arthur Ashford died in 1993 from receiving HIV-infected blood during heart surgery, when that just simply wasn't known then. In the letter I read, written to my mother from Jim Hodson, who was a tennis player I knew in Philly. These kids were really good tennis players and went on to be ranked and go to Clinton College. Jim wrote about being a youngster when my father was a college student at USC. And he wrote about my father's fine tennis game and about my father teaching Jim how to properly nail something. But I mean a real nail, not just a tennis ball. But my father was known for nailing shots, really. I thought, and I have done this, I thought this is what people should do when someone close to you dies. You know, you get a condolence card and then you write a letter and put it inside, as long as we still have paper and can print things on our computers. I also found in my mother's book these two booklets in her box. This is from the night, I love it, I don't know if you can see it, 10 cents. This is from the 1932 Olympics. And my dad, when he was at USC, which is right by Exhibition Park, and 32 Olympics were held there in Olympics Park. And my dad had a job at the Coliseum then, during college. And seeing that booklet made me remember something I'd forgotten. How my father made extra money at that summer by checking all the phone booths when Olympic Park closed each day. And I remember him telling the story, did you have to go back to the days of phone booths too, and when the money came back down? And the first time he told the story, I remember I asked if he turned in the money. And he laughed, and he said he made as much money on forgotten coins from pools as he earned in his salary that summer of 1932. And it made me smile. You know, I was a little kid thinking, aren't you supposed to give the money back? He said, no. No, because he said he split it with his friends, and they had lots of phone booths. So I love to think of him that way. So what I'd like to say is strengths of memory, not to bind us, but to free us. To say, I am here, I am open, I am a player, and I am a receiver of life's mysterious serenity. So, I thank you, and I would welcome any questions from anyone. Let's go to the back. Questions? Yes. Hi.
Did you ever learn how to play the piano?
You know, that's a really good question, because at some point when our daughter Michelle, the older daughter, was in the Army, and she had multiple pianos, and one was in our house in Annandale, and I got the idea that, you know, I would try to do it, but then I didn't. And you know, one thing too is I find I wanted to play the guitar too, but I have bad arthritis, even though I still play tennis at 81, and the hands, you know, so no, I didn't. But I love music, and so I admire someone like Gail that can still play and teach piano. What else? Mike?
Your thoughts about tennis here in the Northern Expo in 2004?
Well, Mike is asking this because we moved from Lima, Peru, and we only had a small little cottage that was built on our property. And we have very few things with us, everything's been in storage, but we did bring some tennis rackets. So Mike and I put the tennis rackets in our car one Sunday, and we went out, and we went to the high school. And then it was the older Northumberland High School in Manchester. There were tennis courts. I was beside myself. I couldn't believe there were tennis courts. Remember, we stopped at a gas station, so some guy was pumping gas, and said, where are the tennis courts now? And we got this look like, we could have asked him, I don't know, brothel on these. I mean, it was just incredible. Somebody then told us there were some in Irvington, but at that time, you had to have a key as an Irvington resident to use those two courts. So Mike's question is important for me because I could only play tennis in Fullerton, California, because the high school had 10 or 12 cement courts. Eventually, there were so many people playing tennis in Fullerton because of this Youth Tennis Foundation that the junior college put in beautiful, like 12, 14 new courts. And green and red, they were wonderful courts. And I could never play. Billie Jean King could never play tennis if it weren't for a recreation department in Long Beach. She didn't come from money. And we didn't have a private club in Fullerton. And so the other part of the question for me is, Mike and I thought about building a tennis court. I'd always dreamed of having like playing the piano, but I taught tennis course. And then one day I said, well, who am I going to play with? And there's a lot of trees. And I couldn't, he'd gone off to Banda Aceh after the tsunami, and I couldn't get down the lane fast enough to get Nancy and Lyle Gage to write a recommendation for me for Indian Creek for us. Because the idea that I could play indoors, out of the sun, in all weather, was a real gift. And so I have great gratitude for that. But tennis for so long was associated with just privilege and so white that it bothers me here greatly, and I'm still waiting to see if they're going to have any tennis courts at the new high school. And the Georgia, the pro at Indian Creek, they tried to start tennis teams, and these kids don't even have tennis courts. So it's a problem here. And I don't understand why that park is built over there without a couple courts. And people love pickleball now. So Deltaville, go other places here, you see they put pickleball lines on the tennis courts. And we have that in Indian Creek. What else? Yes, Keith.
Gail, you've known, played with, and observed a lot of great tennis players, and I'm not talking about Norman, Bill, and me here. But,
And the three of you too.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts on today's professionals and any favorite player.
On the play today, you know what? Keith knows that, and he even went to London for the match when Federer played his very last match. And Keith and I are lovers of Roger Federer. And if you didn't ever heard his address that he gave at Dartmouth College, put it on the internet. It's really wonderful to listen to him. He went to Dartmouth because his agent, forever agent, his daughter was graduating. So the agent got him. And Federer is just great at it. So Keith and I talked about, Keith went to London, got to see the last set that Federer played. I am very taken with the Spanish kid who just won Wimbledon. And I just think he's really a lot. And I was absolutely cheering for the Italian. He's not very tall. And Pasolini, she did not win. She lost in the finals, though, so that's really good. So it's a different world. And I hope in my book you can read some things in there that would tell you. I mean, there's Arthur Ashe winning our national championship. And he's getting $20 a day as Army per diem. And the $14,000 he won went to the other guys who are here professional tennis. You know, when they made the US Open professional. It's just such a different world. A different world. And very commercial. And a lot of people out there trying to make it, you know, into the top 100. What else? John?
You did see Billie Jean there at the Royal Box.
I did what?
See Billie Jean at Wimbledon.
Yes, I did. She has very dark hair, which I really am most of have. Billie Jean is a good example of, she was the most single-focused person, one of the most single-focused persons I've ever met in life. I had a good friend who went to school with her at Longwood High School. No one even knew her because she had one goal in life, and that was tennis. And in a way, I think of Keith's question. I don't see how these professional players can have any other life, even if they're just trying to get in and be in the top 100 and top 200, because it takes everything. And so, and she made it. Yeah, she made it. Yes, Tori?
I have a comment on that. In going back to the Dartmouth speech by Federer, at the end of his address, he was giving the audience and the students for lessons. And the last one I thought was really sort of like Dad's book. He said, life is bigger than the court. And after reading the book again last night, there's a lot more than tennis in that book. It's about life. And I thought there was a synergy there, unbeknownst to you, between Roger and Gail. That's very nice, yeah, and it is. And I could never have been that person. I could never have just faced one thing. I often think because our daughter, and Mike would probably agree, our older daughter, is she has done so many things, but she was the kind that her piano teacher said to her when she was so young, you're going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. She wanted to do everything. And so that's that kind of single focus, I think, that a professional sport, whatever it is. You know, I didn't mention the other tennis player I really liked was Marty from Australia. And she stopped. You know, she won her tournaments, and, you know, she quit tennis to play golf. What she play? Golf. Well, now she will into the golf. Cricket. And I thought she was just delightful. She looked like she took it seriously, but not too seriously. So that's a yeah.
Have you had conversations with the Williams, or Serena Williams at the time?
You don't know, but they came from Los Angeles, and you know, not a great area of Los Angeles, and that's a real story, you know, because of the father and the fact that they came up. The first time I ever heard her name was when we were living in Malaysia, and I used to practice or play matches with James Fallows, who was the writer for the Atlantic. And he came one day and he was telling me about Venus Williams. And she entered her first tournament in Oakland. And I'd never even heard of it. But that tells you how long they were around, because we were in Malaysia from 87 to 90. So they had a long run. We didn't see her this year. I mean, I don't think I saw her. So where they are. Yeah.
So, when just as you always go to tennis fights, do you have any opinions about the multicolored tennis outfits you see in other tournaments?
You know, besides the notion that it was white and it was that kind of reflected the aristocrats that played or something, I was really shocked when they went to that sort of animal motif. It's like I couldn't imagine trying to hit a tennis ball with like something that looked like a tiger. You know, I mean, of course they have to keep changing it because there are big companies that are involved in this Nike and all the rest. I loved watching Wimbledon. You know, realizing that Alcaraz, who won, was wearing this Nike shirt or t-shirt, it looks just like the t-shirts Mike has. And I thought, why costume with the little Nike thing? But I still love that. I laugh because Keith and I, and people that know me, we both wear a lot of black. You know, we wear a lot of black. Black people. What else? I write quite a bit about literature. Yeah. And I had someone who read the book say to me, I don't understand that poem in the book, which is naming of parts. And of course it's about a gun and about a recruit. But that's how I used to teach tennis, you know, with kids, you know. You have to get them out and say, you know, what's this? They say the head. What do you think this is? Throat. What's this? The root. And I would teach it that way for years because of that poem which I read at SC. I love that poem. It's worth going back and looking at. But look, I put all kinds of things in that book because I've written all kinds of pieces. You know, like the one on the women in I wrote for the Air Force Times about men and women, you know, gentlemen and ladies. And so I think the guy that designed this for me was a student of mine in 1969, Fort Sinus, and he had fun putting all kinds of things in there. And I say, it's through sex. So you got the beginning, the middle, and the end. It can be confusing, I know that. What else?
You brought up the example of high school. What is the status throughout the U.S. with regard to tennis? Is that considered an extra, or what kind of
You know, I can't answer that in any general way, but it's worrisome when physical education
I think schools like Matthews, if you ever go over to Matthews, they've got a lot of tennis courts there in the high school. So I'm gonna assume they use those courts for their students. If you have a high school without any tennis courts, nobody's gonna be introduced to it. And that's sad to me. You know why? I had some pictures in the book. One was with Mr. Fred Ford. He was 70. I thought the guy was ancient, you know, because I was, what, 13? He was still playing tennis, and I just thought that was amazing. And he'd say, you can play tennis your whole life, Gail. He'd say, okay. My father only quit playing because they didn't have, he couldn't lift his shoulder up anymore, so, and they didn't like us to artificial shoulders, but he couldn't do that anymore, and they didn't even play shoulders. You know, think of how lucky we are. I couldn't still play if I hadn't had my knees replaced. What else? He's a great surgeon. Dory, Nora both had Nora hernias. We're inviting him to the Florida Net. You know, we keep inviting him. He wants to live here, though. He'll never get here. Yeah. What else? Anything else? But they have food here. So and I know Mike would be happy to sell you a book back there. He doesn't have one, I might give one to someone. Because I only spend money as a writer. I don't make money. That's okay though. Writer because I love it. Well, you were wonderful to come today and ask me, wander around, get some food.